phone is rolling. I'm going to see how this works on Facebook. Live in 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay.
So, I've been given actually quite a bit of thought on how we're going to approach today.
Okay.
But actually another thought came into my head. It's what you said in one of our correspondence. You corrected me when I said 100 million. You said, no, it's 10 million.
For what now?
For planets in Michael's universe.
In a local universe, yeah.
Yeah, you said it's 10 million. That 10 million only accounts for 10% of Michael's universe.
Okay.
10% of Michael's universe is dedicated to the Father. The rest of the beings, the other 90%, they are spirit-fused creatures. And they never leave the local galaxy.
Okay.
And they stay here. Because somebody has to keep the fires going. So, yeah, that would clarify that.
Let's see, these are supposed to be touchscreen gloves. Let's see if...
That's not
guess
working.
Guess not.
Doesn't
Okay.
work for a pad.
There we go. All right. And then, let's see, you said something about a prayer with the thing, and then we do have to give a shout out to the fellow who gave us fan service when I was out and about. He said he liked the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you know who you are. Thank you.
I'll try to use as few bridges in the conversation as possible.
Okay.
But I was kind of like, after I think our third episode, little voice in my head says, you know, you should say a prayer before. And I was like, yeah, whatever, carry on. You know, life is busy, you forget to do shit. So anyways, so we did the next one. After that show, little voice was like, you know, you should have said a prayer before you started. And I'm like, yeah, well, why didn't you remind me? And then, of course, my answer is like, why the fuck didn't you remind me before we started? And it's like, that's not the thought adjuster's job. You're supposed to remember to do this shit yourself. So anyways, I don't know whatever one we're at now. Well, after last week's show, it was like, yeah, you really need to remember. And that was just like over and over and over again. And I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to text Peter because Peter will remember for me.
And I wrote it down. I have this book. There's two top and bottom. This top I wrote right kind of the things I want to talk about or whatever, and then if I want to write down what we, like a list of topics or something, I can write it down there on the bottom part. So are we going to officially start? Or
well, the thing is that
whenever you're ready. But
I know, but here's the thing, and this is where I argue back, is that straight up, I don't care for the idea of public spectacle.
Check. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost as bad as the Son of Man when it comes to praying. When he talked about the preachers in the temple saying these grandiose prayers.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, you know, I can't do that. I feel like an idiot. Because to me, prayer is communion between me and our universal Father. I mean, so
yeah, absolutely.
to make a public display of it, just, it seems like it takes something away from that communion. And I don't know if people can understand that, but that's basically where I am on that. So I think it wasn't so much that I was forgetting to a prayer. It's just I didn't know how to approach it outside of making it a public spectacle.
Okay. And have you had any further?
Well, yes, because after I texted you, I was like, well, I sort of fucking committed myself, all right? Because once you say something out loud, you kind of have to own it. That's why I tend to like to keep a lot of shit to myself, as do most people. And so once I texted you, then I was like, okay, I've got to come up with a solution for this, and I did come up with a solution that both satisfies the Father's will and my, I guess, phobia for public displays in prayer. And we are going to read the quantum syntax version of the Father's Prayer.
Okay.
That is, and I figured that is probably the best. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah. And that satisfies. See how, didn't we talk about Father giving you us for the freedom to come up with clever solutions to our dilemmas?
Yeah.
I mean, worship has to be satisfied. Okay, that's universal law. We know that. But I didn't want to satisfy it the way that it would be commonly expected to, because of my own phobias and and shit like that. And so this is the novel solution to that dilemma, and I had the freedom to choose, and I've satisfied both sides of the equation. So
Excellent.
that's how I see it.
Okay.
Maybe someday in the far off distant future, I'll be shown whether I was right or whether I was wrong.
I think we all will.
So,
And yeah, go ahead.
it's just a matter of finding that somewheres in
yeah,
amongst
no, I
this
think-
mess.
And yeah, just what we were saying will all be shown where we were right and where we were wrong, and I am both looking forward to and slightly dreading that time. But I think I'll be able to deal with it by the time it arrives.
I think so too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's old age. I'm willing to accept that other people might be right too. But that's just me. So, should we get started?
All right. I'm Peter,
I'm Krow.
and this is P&K Q&A for Halloween, and it's sort of a part 2 of a horror show that
We
going to.
probably should have done this
bring to you.
first.
Yeah, I think we should. Sorry.
Yeah, so let's start
Let's
all
back
over
up.
again.
All
We're
right, just
backing
forget
up,
that.
so forget about that.
Do the
So we're
Do
gonna
the-
do
okay, I'll
the
do
prayer first,
yes,
and then we'll do the introduction.
I think so.
Yeah, that feels more right.
It absolutely. So just forget we said anything and
Let's
listen
start
to what
off.
we're doing now.
So this is the Lord's Prayer in quantum syntax grammar. For the Father of the people is with the creation by the Father. With the knowledge in the heaven is with the holy name of the Father. For the knowledge of the truth is for the people of the Father. For the kingdom of the Father is in the knowledge of the truth. For the knowledge of the Spirit is for the unity with the Father. For the freedom of the actions is with the knowledge by the truth. For the protection of the earth is for the life of the people. For the knowledge of the Father is with the protection for the people. For the truth of the people is with the path into heaven. For the teaching of the people is with the truth of the people. For the knowledge of the day is for the production and the learning skills of the people. For the wrongs against the knowledge is with the actions of the people. For the sins of the people is for the wrongs against our neighbor, for the knowledge of the people in the forgiveness of those wrong decisions. For the people of the debts of the debt are of the responsibility in the truth. For the people of the awareness are for the forgiving with the truth, for the knowledge of the people leader is with the teaching with the truth. For the evil of the people is with the lack of knowledge of the truth. For the knowledge of the truth is for the freedom of the people against the evil of the darkness. For the people are with this agreement. Okay. And that is how we begin. I am Krow.
I'm Peter. And this is P&K Q&A for Halloween. And we're doing
Part two.
Part two. So we'll just
Part
go
two.
into it, I guess.
Part one, we ended off with the fallen, and there's very few of them left, and that's because of the well, we talked about that a little bit. A lot of them were destroyed, so there's not a whole lot of them left. They're generations removed from the original that showed up 200,000 years before. They're not quite as clever as their parents, and they're desperate, and they've mostly forgotten about what the Adamic bloodline has done to their, basically, their subsistence. And because of that, they're all dead by Pentecost. A lot of those fallen were gone. They were dead. The ones that were in the flesh, dead. There were a few of them kicking around in spirit. But after Pentecost, they were gone. When the Son of Man left us, these beings were adjudicated and taken off planet. The only ones that were left on the planet were the ones that were part of the original prince's staff and the prince himself. They weren't taken off planet because they were assigned to this planet. This is where they're at. They weren't really trespassing. It was kind of, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was their home. So
they were, what it says, I think, is that they were stripped of certain abilities to influence other beings, I think is what I recall it saying. Yeah. They were basically put under house arrest, or they were demoted, I guess. I'm not sure.
No, I think house arrest is...
Yeah,
they're basically under house arrest. Yes, because the Urantia was their home,
yeah,
and they weren't allowed to leave it, and they were stripped of certain powers. Mm-hmm. So they were powerless. Yeah. And so, but all the ones that showed up without authorization, they were taken off the planet. So all the fallen by Pentecost were either dead or taken off planet, and everybody else was just left to stay here. And they were all dying anyways, because if you do not acknowledge God's existence as a personality and as a father, then God doesn't acknowledge you. And if God doesn't acknowledge you, then you don't exist. For these beings, it just took time for their existence to run its course. And then they would just die, cease to exist. They were done. And some of them have been adjudicated over the last 2,000 years. And the final adjudication was done, rumored to have been done in the mid-'80s, and that was Lucifer's obliteration. He no longer exists as a personality, and he's finally he's gone. Satan is still under house arrest at the Capitol, and he may already be adjudicated as well. And so he was taken off planet. Oh, Satan was taken off planet with the Pentecost, because again, he didn't belong here.
Caligastia would be the only one that I can name right now who would, because he was originally assigned to be the planetary prince.
Yes.
And I don't know whether he's still here or he's been adjudicated and taken away. Or
okay, actually, our story actually begins with Caligastia. Yes.
Okay.
So Caligastia, few of his planetary staff, totally stripped of power, and they're left on this planet. And to make matters worse, I mean, at least they had like the fallen who were in who's the fallen's descendants who were in the flesh, and they could like communicate with them and shit like that. But after Pentecost, they couldn't communicate with anybody. They're just basically fucked. And so, well, I mean, yes, they could, but here's the problem. After Pentecost, the whole world fell into darkness and ignorance, and that was a problem because Caligastia and his staff that were left over, they couldn't talk to anybody because they were because of all the rampant ignorance in the 1,000 years of the Dark Ages. People were just ignorant to everything, and if they tried to like communicate with somebody in any way that they could, people would just be like, demons, fear, 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 and and it's like, God.
It was worse for them than being in solitary confinement.
Yes, you're getting the point. And the few humans that they could communicate with just took everything so far out of context and just ended up being no good to them. Because, I mean, they wanted a human that was clever enough to, like, start building shit so that they could try to transcend themselves using technology. But there wasn't a scrap of technology on the planet at that time. And, because the goal was to march... The fallen were so few after the deluge that they couldn't just build their cities by themselves anymore. Like before, they really didn't need humans to build anything for them. Yeah, they used humans basically, as grunt labor, and they did all the complicated stuff. Problem was, after the deluge, there wasn't enough skilled labor amongst the fallen because there were so few of them that they needed humans to be skilled in order to help them bring back their technology. But humans aren't very bright and were scared of fucking everything. And so every time they took one step forward, it was 2 steps back between, because, I mean, they had to maintain their own sustenance. So that meant sacrifices. And plus, at the same time, they had to fucking train humans. But the thing is that you need humans. When you want to train humans with skills, you need a full-time labor force in the agriculture so that you can fucking feed these humans so that they can have time to go to university, study shit, learn shit that you need them to learn, and not be out in the field plowing all fucking day.
Catch-22.
Oh, fuck yeah. So it all has to fit together. I mean, if you don't think that it does, it's like universities would not exist if we didn't have farmers.
Right.
End of. That's the beginning and the end of the story, right there. Because people need to be fed. And then, everything else just fits to that. So anyways, so they're on this planet. Everything's ignorant. They're frustrated as hell. And they're dying at the same time. So they're desperate to try to get humans, back on track towards technology as fast as they fucking can. But it ain't happening because fucking so the world is just steeped in superstition. In the few parts of the world that wasn't, they just, it was so nice in the environment that there wasn't enough stress to motivate a human to do anything. And so, so they had two extremes. They had too much stress, so you can't communicate with a human that's just surviving. And then on the other side of the world, you got a human that just partying all the time, and that becomes pretty fucking useless because they're too busy having a good time to try for you to try to get their attention. So just basically fucked. And they can't possess us anyways. So screwed there too, right? Actually, they can, but only with our permission. We'll get into that. So anyways, this goes on for a long time. Now, but sometime in the 14th century, Caligassia, he came across this clever family in Great Britain. Oh, they were dynamic, they were clever. He was able to start communicating with them, but it took him years. Oh God, it took him years. Because what he was trying to do, he was trying to convince this family that he was their special guiding spirit. But, you can't, so, too many bridge phrases, sorry. So, Caligassia spent a few hundred years with his family, starting with the great-grandfather, and then moving up to the father, and then finally having the best success with one of the sons, where he could almost communicate with the son like you and I do. The son was very talented, very bright, and his name was John Dee. And at a very young age, I mean, he was teaching in universities, all this esoteric stuff. He was deep into it, and Caligassia was directing him, and most of his staff was right there, this is our guy, this is our one chance to get things going. But the problem was with D is that it was a mixed bag of cats for them, okay? Because you had Catholicism was just pounded into people at that time in Europe, right? So D was pounded with Catholicism growing up, but he didn't quite get into it. So he kind of dabbled in Hermeticism, and so he kind of leaned towards the esoteric, but he still had this religious leaning towards Christianity. Couldn't help it, right? Because it came up through his childhood, and so he wanted to talk to angels. That was Dee's motivation. And there was nothing that Caligassia or any of them could do, right? Because, I mean, they needed this family to try to, start a movement so that they could get back on track with technology. And Dee he invented a lot of stuff that Queen Victoria used. But Dee had this fascination with angels. And he wanted to talk with them. This is where shit gets weird, okay? So Dee came across these little old books, again, more old books, and, they talked about how to open up portals, talk to angels, and what have you, like that. Caligassia actually kind of pointed him in that direction, because at the same time, Caligassia wanted reinforcements. His staff was dying. He also wanted Dee to open up these portals. And so Dee did, and this is where shit gets really fucked up. So Dee opens up a portal. Caligassia, he's excited because now he's about to get fresh troops, because the portal that he opened was to another dimension where more fallen are. More of the fallen. And so he opened that up, and the fallen came in. But this is a new crop. these guys are these ones are different, not part of, you know, there's nobody that Caligassia knows in this group, and they just come boom walking in because they were invited by a human. He invited them in. So anyways, they start coming in, and they take over right away. Caligassia, I mean, they just ignored him because he was just like, to them he was just nothing.
Yeah, I wondered how it was going to go for him.
Yeah.
These other, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't work out at all for him. They just didn't want nothing to do with them. In fact, they shunned him. They just get out of our way. He did keep himself alive. Well, not so much alive, but in the group by letting them know about certain secrets. He held knowledge. I mean, he knew where all the books were buried. He knew where all the secret libraries were at, right? And so he used that as his, you know, as his chips that he kept close to him. And so they didn't completely ignore him because he was proven useful. Well, then you look at history. So this all took place in the mid-1460s, 1470s. And right around that time, the British Empire started.
Mm-hmm.
He helped design those ships. He was the first to coin the phrase British Empire. And he convinced Queen Victoria, build ships, start conquering new lands. And so so that's what they started to do. They built ships and they started spreading. And then now, that all happened because when all these fallen had came through, they could communicate with John Dee, because John Dee had an ability to communicate with these beings, and Caligassia exploited it. And so he's talking with these beings, and they're telling him what they want, and what they want is they want bodies, is what they want. But they know the rules. They can't possess humans, not without their permission. And so this is where he devised a plan. He created this group. And when he got some, he found ambitious young men. Ambitious, they craved power, but they're ignorant as fuck of what really, how things really work. But they weren't superstitious. They were agnostic or atheist or whatever you want to call it, right? So, anyways, he would recruit these guys, and he would bring them into this secret inner circle, made them feel special. That's what he did, and he would brainwash them, and they would freely accept the possession by the fallen. They would do it of their own free volition, because they wanted that power. So, not much different than the Goa'uld invading a human body on a show like Stargate.
Okay,
yeah, same fucking concept. So they took over these humans, and then these humans went out and they started doing things. They started working in industry, having their own businesses. This was about getting power. I mean, you ever wonder why the Crown allowed a middle class to develop? I mean, really, that is the most dangerous thing for any monarch.
Yeah, I actually did because if you think technically or tactically, it's sort of actually against their best interests from that perspective.
It is. I'd be better off just keeping fucking the peasants around.
The peasants and the aristocracy.
Yes, much better system for them. And the shit hasn't even hit the fan in France by this time. So there's no reason for them to even think about a middle class, or the document, the Magna Carta. There was no reason for them to think about that, but they did, because there's one thing that the fallen know. Free-range humans are way more productive than enslaved humans. They know that. And so their idea was, we need to free up these humans. They need to, because we need technology is what they want. They wanted skills, they wanted technology, they needed to start building shit. So this is the new crop of the fallen. They knew exactly what they needed. And and so they possess these bodies, and they start out going with all this technology, and next thing you know, you got the British Empire. Now, the fallen, when they got the second crop, when they got here, they found out from Caligassia that these humans, the bodies that these fallen were possessing, there was a reason why they had to be young men, because the human body cannot tolerate their possession. It's basically like having a chunk of plutonium sitting in your belly. It's just it just unravels the DNA, because that's what their vibrational frequency does to the human body. So they were kind of humped, because they couldn't use any of the humans in their immediate vicinity for harvesting, because everybody in Europe by that time was pretty much had some lineage tied back to the Adamites at this time. Remember, I said it doesn't take much.
Yeah.
And and then that just keeps going right through the family line.
Yeah. So the Adamic DNA made them unsuitable for use by these entities.
Yes, completely unsuitable. So that meant that they had to go search for food. So build ships, start an empire, start spreading. Good fucking plan, if you ask me. It's a damn good plan. So that's what they did, and they had a good idea of where to start, and that's why they ended up in Africa. So boom, everybody ends up in Africa, and that's when they start bringing back black people. And fortunately enough for them, unfortunately for the people of Africa, is that Africans looked so much different from Europeans that it was easy for Europeans of that time not to have any empathy for these humans. It was easy. I mean, for fuck's sakes. I mean, they used to, in Paris, they used to lock Africans in cages. And it was a sideshow, for fuck's sakes. I mean, it's crazy shit like that in history. Hell, I think they did it in New York right up until the early 20th century.
I suppose,
Yeah, it's fucked up shit. Actually, I think I seen an interview of the guy that played that. He basically looked at it as playing a part. And and it was just like, I had a part to play. I got paid for it. What do I care? But I mean, when you look at it, it's like, that's just fucked up. That's all it is. Anyways, so that's why the slave trade ended up in Africa, and all the horrific things that go along with that. Now, the Northern Europeans had already discovered North America. But by this time, we're up in the 15th century now. By the late 14th century, Christopher Columbus had heard rumors of a land to the west. and he heard he heard these rumors through some of the Norsemen, because they still had their legends of visiting a land to the west, and they tried to settle these places, but it never worked out for them, because they couldn't put their tribalism aside long enough to build a community. Because what would happen with these Norsemen, in one case in particular, it was basically a race to the land. I think this was in northern Newfoundland, and they raced to get there, and but then there was this daughter of a king or powerful tribesman, who the fuck knows, and she didn't get there first. But the people that did get there, the leaders that did get there first, the deal was that you claim your stake, right? Well, she got there last for whatever reason, and so all the best claims were already taken, and so her solution to this dilemma was to kill the competition. Well, that turned the people that followed these original leaders against her. I don't know what the hell she was thinking, but I guess she thought she could keep it all under control. But no, it all fell apart very quickly. That colony settlement very quickly deteriorated into dust, and the people that did survive that shit show managed to get back home the following season. And so there was these rumors floating around about a land, and so that's when Christopher Columbus set out on his journey, and not that long after Dee opened up that portal either, and because we're only talking 1495.
Yeah, because I found it interesting that looking back now, is probably that Columbus sailed however far, several thousand miles across the Atlantic in 1492 or whenever it was that he did that. So yeah,
there was something that compelled him, because I'll tell you, I mean, his crew were going to mutiny him. They were terrified. They were scared. Like, they were genuinely scared. But there was something that Christopher Columbus knew, something that was shown to him without a doubt, and he was just told, keep sailing west, you will hit land, and something assured him that would happen. Now he happened to end up in Central America, Jamaica.
Yeah, the somewhere in the Caribbean is what
yeah, so he ended up in the Caribbean. I think it was more expected that he would hit north, but that worked too. Now, what was written in his journal, I was just always like, what the fuck did he mean by that? It may not have been Christopher Columbus' journal. It might have been somebody that was close to him. And I was like, what the fuck did he mean by that? And what he said was, we have found the children of Shira. And it's just like, what the fuck does he mean? And that question was answered. They found the red children, that they knew that the legendary blood of the red children. Remember from last week?
Yeah.
That was the one that was favored. That was the one that was most favored. And they found them. What the fuck? So that means they went actually looking. So this story that we get, that he was looking for a shortcut to India, is propaganda. That's what that is. That's propaganda. Because many ships went that direction many times and got lost and never seen again. Why do you think the legends popped up that you'd fall off the edge of the world? Those legends didn't just start willy-nilly. Those legends started by sailors knowing men and knowing ships that have sailed west and never returned. It's like they fell off the edge of the earth. Never seen them again. They went west and they were gone. That's all we know. Because the routes, north and south, they knew those routes. They knew how to get around the Horn of Africa. You had to be a skilled captain to do it, but they knew how to do that. So they could sail around the Horn of Africa, some of the worst waters ever. Every sailor knew this. So the only explanation for any sailor that would see a ship off with a seasoned crew and an experienced captain and head west and never come back, their only conclusion would be that they fell off the edge of the earth.
So side note, they talk about the earth. I suppose, did people actually believe the earth was flat at that point? And were some people trying to prove it was round, or that they were looking for this other...
There was no reason for them to think any differently.
Yeah, then the earth is flat, because...
That the earth is flat. There was zero reason, but...
You would assume that by looking at it.
But at that time, before Christopher Columbus, okay, I forget the timeline on this one, but there was work being done in the North Sea where they were measuring latitude lines, and they were trying to measure the curve of the earth.
Probably Magellan might have been involved in stuff like that. I think the history we think we know says Magellan was the first person to sail around the world.
Okay.
I think it's Magellan. Yeah, Columbus was the first to go to an unknown continent.
Yes.
And he came back. He never went all the way around I mean, I don't think he did. But Magellan was the first who sailed around the world, so we are told. So
they were like top secret missions going on, and they were like, they basically this was all like high tech stuff that they were doing up there, like for their
state of the
art for them. Yes. And this was all being done by the British Navy. So they were figuring out that the Earth was round, but I think those missions started after Columbus discovered America.
Because they got some of his data, latitude, longitude, stuff like that, and they were able to sort of calculate, if it's round, how big is it, and then if it's a sphere, how tall, for lack of a better word, and I think they took that data and probably were using it in their experiments.
They had that data. That's what made the British Empire expand so quickly, because with that data,
they had the maps.
With that data, they could start making their own maps.
Correct.
That's what made them powerful as a seafaring nation, is because they had the ability to make their own maps. And
information is power, even back then.
Yeah, even back then, more so back then.
Yes.
Some of the clever ways that they would hide their messages. So, to get back on track, they were like, they found the children of Shira, and it's like, what the hell? Well, you do a little bit of looking, and you find out that Shira was a blood goddess, and it's just like, what the hell is that all about? And yeah, it was because the red man was their favorite meal, and so, as far as America was, and as messed up as the trip was, it was a 3-month trip back then. Remember, 3 months in a boat, that's a long time, and no stops. That's 3 months in the middle of the ocean. It wasn't like going down like the coast of Africa.
That's open sea. It's like a transcontinental plane trip or whatever. It's like you think 8 hours in a 747's a long time.
But on top of that, there were no ports. Like you could skip. You know, you could go out to sea for like a day and a half, boom, come into port. You can do that. You could do that all the way down Africa. This like fucking 3 months at sea shit. That's like no. You could like stop places and take on provisions and shit like that. But when you do a 3 month trip straight across the ocean, they had no experience with this. Like, you know, there was more like starvation and shit like that happening because, you know, because food would go rotten in that 3 month period, like if it wasn't preserved properly. So I mean, you're just screwed. Water, big fucking concern. Like you had to have like water storage. Like you were catching every drop of rain that came out of the sky. You know, if you were a clever captain, this is how pirates actually stayed at sea for long periods of time. They would actually turn into storms and collect that water, and that was basically fuel, because they knew as long as they had water on board, they were good.
Yeah, because they had a sailing ship, for goodness sake. The driving power was free.
Yeah.
And usually available in the direction you could work with.
And so, yeah, they would do that. And, you know, you get really, you know, and just drop a net in the ocean and bring up your food.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how pirates survived. They were not stupid. This is how they, this is, like, the real smart ones never got caught.
Yeah.
And because they didn't have to land anywhere if they knew what they were doing. So, yeah, so going across an ocean like that. So why did kings of these countries invest so much to get to ostensibly a worthless chunk of land 3 months across the ocean? Yeah, they wanted the people. Yeah. You think that they went in and they slaughtered all of those people and
just for the land, because they wanted the land?
Yeah, no, you don't do that. You use the people in that land. I mean, that's the way the Romans did it for years, because there was no, like, the fallen were like almost like non-existent by that time, and you see what the Romans did.
Yeah, there was a template that worked. Why depart from it? So another aside, the phrase "everything you know is wrong." We're going to find out exactly how much is meant by everything. I'm thinking maybe a bit more than we might think. So,
yeah,
but please continue.
Yeah, so that's why they came over here in the droves, and of course they needed a workforce. Here's the thing: in all of history, you invade a piece of land and you need a workforce. What is the easiest fucking thing to do? Enslave the native population.
Right. And
there's ways to do it. And people are like, oh, you know, the red man, you know, was lazy. You know, they couldn't get him to do anything. You hold a man's family hostage, that man's going to go do whatever the fuck you need him to do. So there are clever ways to motivate a population to do work for you. None of those methods were employed with the red man. Why? Why? I mean, every place humans have had the opportunity to submit another human, slavery. Mm-hmm. The red man never got enslaved. There are reasons. There's several reasons. It's because the red man is stubborn and will not be enslaved. But like I said, there are ways to motivate people and to get work out of them. And none of these methods were employed. Instead, they brought the workforce from Africa. Why? Because they wanted supper. And so all of this slaughter took place, and genocide after genocide, and it was just a free for all. Most of the commanders and their following in a lot of these genocides that happened, they were, for lack of a better term, demon possessed, willingly demon possessed. and they thought themselves powerful. And when they and that being that was inside them just couldn't help itself. It just went on rampage after rampage after rampage, all across the Americans. And it was like, once, like, people that were once, say, there was a secret war going on at that time too. And so these fallen were being excommunicated off the planet, one by one, by I guess we're getting into the good news of our horror story.
Okay.
One by one, these they would be exiled from this planet because priests that were, I guess, lack of a better title, priests, but true men of Christ, they were fighting for us in the shadows.
Okay.
And they would fight these fallen. They knew they weren't fighting the men that they possessed. They knew that they were fighting that spirit that was
So
in them.
Were we talking about exorcism, or is that
Exorcism,
actually a thing, or what? Or I just
exorcism to an extent, but to the extent of these men knew secrets because they got these secrets from the original apostles, because Christ taught them things that we do not get to know about. Okay, they were taught, the ones that could pass it on. Philip was one of them, and they were taught how to call on the personalities of the universe to come. Because remember what we talked about before is like an angel, a seraphim, a cherubim, they do not see much beyond 25 feet.
right. So
In
we're
this
talking
room.
about why prayer is important. You do this prayer which gets their attention, and then once you do that, you can, I guess, elaborate on what the issue is and ask them to help you with it,
Yes, and
or to direct
them.
to get the help that you need. They know who can help.
These men knew what prayers to chant and what vibrations to use to get the attention of the proper seraphim to do that job.
Okay.
You see, they were not exorcising these beings out of the human. They were not doing it. What they were doing is there's a certain level of seraphim.
It's like I don't want to depersonalize the server, but it's like operating at a distance, like operating a machine, or I think you know what I want to say, and maybe you folks know what I want to say, but it's calling in a specialist. It's like, yes. I don't do such and such a thing. I know how to put it in motion. I know what specialist to get a hold of when I need a certain job.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know how to do this, but I know the guy who does.
Correct.
Yeah, and you might not know the guy, but I know the guy, and I got his phone number. So you need me in order to get that guy's number.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, it's the same deal. So what these guys are trained to know what vibration to chant at to get the attention of the seraphim that specializes in the removal of this type of creature off of a planet.
Okay.
So these guys aren't doing the exercising. They are just letting the guy know, who knows how to do the job, where they're at.
Okay.
And then they show up and they do the job. The problem is that, these fuckers are constantly, legions of them came in when D opened that door, because these beings are basically, they've got nowhere left to hide in Michael's universe. Their hiding places are becoming few and far between. They are being hunted. We talked about this before. About they are being hunted down by the by universal personalities. But when they end up on a planet that has rebelled, they're safe. This is base. Yeah, this is base. Yeah, as long as you got your hand on base, you're good.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so that's basically what these planets, these 36 planets that rebelled, that's basically what they are. They're places where they can go and they can hide out. But
it's like living in Tijuana.
Yeah, but you could still get picked up by the authorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what ends up happening is they get taken out, and right now we're getting oh man, and how they harvest the blood is just horrific. I don't even want to go into that. It's just absolutely it requires adrenaline is what it does, and so we're just gonna leave it at that. And then we get up into our modern history. So the good guys have been fighting all along. This is why the fuckers haven't taken over the planet completely, is because they can't. And things were going quite well. But then somewheres at the beginning of the late 19th century, early 20th century, these fuckers figured out that there was an epoch coming up on this planet. And once they realized that there was an epoch coming up on this planet, they were like, uh-oh, these humans are not learning shit fast enough. What can we do to get them to learn faster?
World War I, World War II, Great Depression. Yeah.
The Great Depression wasn't as helpful as
No.
they expected it to be.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, World War I. What came out of World War I? Airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
And also World War I broke a lot of taboos.
Right.
And a lot of prejudices. Especially prejudices against technology.
Mm.
You know, a lot of guys didn't want to give up their horse. So that is what happened there. And that gave that boost that catapulted us forward. So like after World War I, technology took a leap.
Yeah.
Plus there was rebuilding, so it was rebuilding in new ways, and there was a little bit more experimenting because it was like nobody wanted to go through that again. And they basically found out that all of their old equipment was obsolete. Wooden boats just didn't cut it in a 20th century war. And so navies had to be updated. New divisions in military had to be invented. Air Force had to be invented. Air Force. Then, people think, oh, just Air Force and planes. No, you don't just need people and planes for an Air Force.
No, you need the ground support. Have you ever been to an airport? The planes are 1% of the infrastructure. You have to have the buildings, the supplies, the mechanic, all of that stuff.
Meteorology.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there is so much involved with the Air Force.
It wasn't just another department, it was another dimension.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to find out with Space Force.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not just, it's not what you think it is. It encompasses a lot.
Yeah. And just side note from my history of aviation semester I took in university, in even after World War II, I think the U.S. Air Force, initially it was the U.S. Army Air Corps.
Yeah.
And don't catch me lying on this, but I think even after World War II or after World War II, it became then it became the Air Force, the National National Aviation Civil Authority, and then NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
It was supposed to be the civilian arm.
Right.
Of space exploration.
Yeah.
Air Force felt it was their purview to do the space exploration. Military thought it wanted a piece of it too, because they seen objects being dropped out of the sky as being a matter of national security. And of course, if the Army wanted in on it, then the Navy, they wanted a piece of it. And the Navy and Air Force have always had their differences, because Navy has their own airplanes.
Yes.
Air Force never liked that very much. It's like, we are the only ones that are allowed Air Force, but Navy was like, we don't want you fuckers on our boat, so fuck you, we got our own airplanes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about the Marines, because the Marines are, it's basically soldiers who can and do go aboard ships.
Well, Marine, people think Marine means, they operate on water. No. Marine is an old English term. It's just basically your universal soldier. That's what a Marine is. I mean, Marines have to learn everything. Yep. If you're a Marine, then that means that you've learned it all. Even how to even right down to triage. There's not a whole lot that a Marine can't do.
Okay.
And then, of course, they've got their own levels that they go through. But yeah, Marine's a universal soldier, essentially.
Awesome.
So it doesn't mean just on the water. They served on ships.
Correct, because I do not know a lot about the Marines.
No, they
kind of kick ass.
Yeah, they served on ships. Yeah, they serve on ships.
Yes.
They serve on land. They serve wherever it is necessary.
Okay, so we were talking about World War I, the technological and advancement, breaking of taboos, and a whole cultural uplift, almost, let's say. And then World War II sort of provided more mechanization technology. That technology really took off kind of in the aftermath of World War II, when everybody was rebuilding America and so on. And that was when the farms, the agriculture really started going to tractors instead of horses. Before World War II, there were lots and lots of horses on farms. After World War II, it went into free fall. It was mechanized agriculture all over.
And it was the best thing to happen for us, really. I mean, it takes a great deal of resources to have horses and oxen on site to do work.
It does, yes.
I mean, now with modern technology, one or two people can run a farm.
Yeah.
And you just bring in the help for harvest season, and people sign up for that shit, because basically it's free travel to get on a harvest crew.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's free travel.
Some of the coolest stories I've heard are from custom harvesters who go. They start in Texas, and as the season goes, they come all the way up through Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and there's even farms kind of up in central northern Saskatchewan, Peace River, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, the stories I've heard are just amazing.
It's awesome. I mean, I've been on oil crew, seismic oil crew. Okay. So basically, we would go from area to area doing seismic surveying, and God, some of the greatest times were in these one-horse town motels, and basically the motel was there basically because crews would need them, and there's just story after story. I loved hanging out with the French guys. They were awesome to hang out with. You end up meeting people. Our pilot was from Australia. He was crazy as fuck. And had this one guy from Kosovo, lazy as fuck. I mean, I don't know how the fuck he made it across the ocean, being as lazy as he was. And more times than not, we found him asleep in the holly pads. Yeah, it's just like, good God. So, yeah, tons of wonderful stories. So, yeah.
Just one I've heard from the custom harvesters. I knew a guy who's he and his brother and his father were custom harvesters somewhere in Nebraska or somewhere. They pulled up to a field and they started harvesting it, and they sent one of the guys out to do it, and one of the brothers and his dad were sitting, and he said, do we know whose field this is? And Dad said, no, but we will before long. Just thought I'd share that with you. It's hilarious.
It won't take long.
Okay.
And the thing is that, you know, we need people to travel.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And you know, and because people need to see what's going on in the world,
right,
and to get experience and to gain knowledge and to gain wisdom.
Absolutely. And
you don't do that sitting at home. And okay, so we're coming up through World War II, and get back on track.
What's the next big thing? The formation of NASA, the space race, that sort of thing.
Formation of the UN. Mm-hmm. Started out as a League of Planets, but it got dissolved very quickly because they were the League of Nations very quickly degenerated into a new world order type thing, mm-hmm. and people just rejected it. Even then, they were like, "No, we won't have anything to do with this. Yeah. You cannot tell a sovereign country how to run their government. Fuck you." And especially the Americans. I mean, as much as they wanted it to hold together. Even the Russians didn't want to see the League of Nations, but the problem is that there was too much dictating and not enough cooperation. Mm-hmm. And nobody's I mean, I'm sure somebody knows, but I'm not altogether sure who was at fault for that, whether it was the Russians or the Americans. I think it was more the Americans. And so that got dissolved very quickly, and then after World War II, there seemed to be a need for it.
Yeah. So
the United Nations was formed, but I think that the oligarchy got a little bit more clever, and they felt like they maybe should be a little bit more subtle
yes.
about shit. And you see it. You see it all through the 20th century where they push, mm-hmm. and they get pushed back, because there was a secret war going on the whole time. I mean, look at the McCarthy era. I mean, we are told in our history books that it was a Red Scare. I'm sorry to tell you, but that was not just a Red Scare. It was a real thing that was happening. America was being infiltrated by Russia. By Russia and Germany at that time. It was, I mean, McCarthy was not being paranoid. He was bang on fucking correct. And, you know, they went after everybody, and guess what? Everybody that they found out that Hollywood was subverting the American people. And so a bunch of actors and shit were arrested. Well, guess the fuck what? They weren't wrong.
Yeah, what are we seeing today, or we may be seeing soon? So, yeah.
Already seeing it. And the thing is that, so they backed off on Hollywood. Hollywood was good for a while. Yeah, they had their snuff films, but I mean, shit, look at what's on the fucking internet. God. And, some of these snuff films were pretty bad. You know, 9mm, what is it? Is it 30mm movie? Nicolas Cage.
Oh, the tape? 8mm?
8mm, yes. Nicolas Cage, the movie. Yeah, that's more of a documentary than just a movie. That fucking think
the
of
one
that.
Where some wildlife guy had a camera set up and he catches somebody offing a politician and he's on the run for his life, or am I thinking a different?
You're thinking
movie?
of a different one?
Okay.
No, Nicolas Cage, after a guy dies, his wife finds snuff porn, and it was all like kiddie shit. Kiddie porn. Yeah, it was child exploitation.
Right.
And that is just only a sliver of what's really going on in Hollywood. And that's, like I said, it's a documentary, not fiction.
Yeah. So I'm going to just about when the stuff that is being declassified and stuff. The real thing that's going to be hard for everybody to swallow is when Hollywood is exposed, and how many, like, how would you handle your favorite actor being
part of that?
Like, I'm like, please not Morgan Freeman or whoever you play.
Oh, God, yes. Oh,
whoever your favorite actor is, like, oh my God, is he like these? As much as these people are almost gods to us.
Almost, yes.
Our favorite actors, like like say Morgan Freeman or somebody.
I mean, I'm not like big on like idol worship. I mean, everybody's heard me talk about it, but I mean, I've got some really favorite actors, and that I really enjoy watching them perform. I really do. I pay money to watch them perform, and there's been The Rock has been the biggest disappointment so far. The Rock. It's just like, God damn it. Why? God damn it. Because I really enjoy watching The Rock perform. Yeah. And who doesn't? Really, right? I mean, it's The Rock. I love every movie that he's ever been in, just because it's The Rock. Disappointment. I mean, at least Bruce Willis fucking, still got Bruce Willis. Oh, Jesus, so far.
Lost Sean Connery.
Sean lost him. He lost it? Oh, God.
Died at 90?
Died at 90. I'm sure that he was hit neck deep in the fucking Hollywood swamp. I mean, it had to be. He wasn't that great of an actor. He really wasn't. But I mean, he had a presence on screen, no doubt, but he wasn't the greatest actor. I mean, he was no Michael Keaton, that's for fucking sure. Or Michael Caine, I should say. I mean, Michael Caine, there's an actor. That guy could act I've seen him act in like so many different movies in so many different roles, and I'm just like, wow, this guy does not do the same role twice.
Who was the guy who played? He played Gandhi in the movie Gandhi, and then in Iron Man 3, I think he was the guy who was the face, the mouthpiece for this whatever thing that was trying to kill the president or whatever. The actor. It was one of those actors who could play anybody, even a kind of a minor part, and do it to the hilt.
Yeah, you see, I love actors like that. I don't know which actor you're talking about.
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember his name. I never really knew.
And so they, and they also, so after they had basically had their genocide, they just about wiped out the red race again, and and of course it got stopped because there were good people alive then that stopped it. I mean, there's I know in Canada, like, there was like a great movement to protect the indigenous population of Canada.
Yes.
I've seen the legislation that's been passed. I've read the legislation. I mean, it hasn't been implemented though in the spirit in which it was written by any stretch of the imagination, but it was enough to protect First Nations for right up until the 20th century, and then there was a resurgence. But by that time, there was also another problem, is that by the time we get to the 20th century, there's really not much left for pure red race on the planet. A few up north, but a lot of them actually, when the Europeans first came over, ended up breeding into Europeans. That was basically the good guys. That was their way of saving the red race, to get as many Europeans over here as quickly as possible. That was another thing. so that they could integrate with the red man and save the people. The only way they could save them from the fallen was to make them so that they could not use them anymore for their food.
Yeah, so we were saying the Adamic line, it takes a very little to make a person unsuitable for this purpose. So I guess we have the interbreeding of the red man and the white man and so on, and even just a little bit of that makes it so these bad guys can't use them for their purposes.
Yeah, and we integrated well. I mean, ask yourself, why don't we have a English European accent? The Australians still do, sort of. How much interaction have they had with their native population? Very, very little. The tribesmen in Australia, they basically stayed to themselves, and there was like little or no interaction. Here in North America, huge interaction.
Right.
So much to the point that we all have First Nation accents. Or no accent at all, I guess, but
Yeah.
you know, but basically we have they call it a North American accent.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we have. And there's different variations of that accent as you go up and from north to south.
Okay. Yeah.
And, you know, and different phrases, but basically none of us have a European English accent, and we should. There's no reason why we shouldn't, and but we don't. Why?
We speak about the same language, so you know what? Yeah. So.
Yeah, just that we just don't
But
have
why
the
is
accent.
it different? So yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's
That's
because
Krow's answer
of
to that, yeah.
our deep interaction with the First Nations in this part of the world,
Okay.
which is, you know, I mean it's a good thing, and you know, but I mean they've suffered, you know, because not everybody's a good person. So
Right. Yeah.
what can you say? It's a rough planet, and so now they've lost that ability. So in the north, the First Nations pretty much integrated with the English, French, basically English and French mostly. And in the south, the First Nations in South America, they integrated with the Spanish that came over. I mean, even they don't talk a pure dialect down there, but they were the Spanish. Things were different in the south because early on, the Spanish began to respect them, and also because it happened differently in South America, is because, like I said before, there was more. They had Adamic blood in their veins, because there's elongated skulls everywhere in South America, and so they already had a bit of an Adamic uplifting, so they weren't as useful as they went like on the eastern part of South America. There were all the slaughters, but then the slaughters stop as you go west, because that's where they have the most Adamic blood in their veins, so they couldn't use them. So and plus they fought back. There was that too, and so now even the red race has been tainted for them. And so now they're just left basically with Africa, but Africa is very quickly being uplifted because of tons of missionary work going on. There was nothing that they could do with the Vatican Church because too many people, the Vatican Church already had momentum. They've already had almost a 1,500-year momentum. Yes. Before these second crop of demons showed up. And the Catholic Church had a policy of, you know, spreading the good news, just like Jesus' apostles did. And so they would send out, so the Vatican always had a mission of sending out missionaries to any newly discovered place. So once the new crop of fallen had started sending the empires out in the ships, the Vatican was right there with priests who operated from a position of pure faith and belief. You see, just because they're part of the Vatican doesn't mean that they were part of the Vatican.
Yeah.
You know, there was lots of priests that had pure intentions,
Yes.
and really wanted to, they wanted to spread the word of Jesus and his message. And they did it in a very honorable way. I mean, there was more good priests than there are bad.
Well, I'm sure that there'd have to be. I mean,
so these good ones, with sincere hearts, would end up in Africa and preaching with the Africans, baptizing them, which baptism is pretty powerful. I mean, think about it. The baptism woke Michael up to his true identity, to his true self. So how powerful is a baptism? And so that is what was going on. There, so Africans were being baptized, and so now they have the Son of Man over them because of that baptism. So yeah, baptism is doing its thing too. It's a water ritual. And but still, I mean, they could still get the blood, and that's what they were doing. But by the time you get to the 20th century, they're running low on food, because now they've got to figure out a way to create a synthetic version of human adrenochrome, and but they're not being very successful. The synthetic isn't as good as the real thing. There is a synthetic version, but it's basically expired EpiPens. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, because what is in an EpiPen, it's basically a super stimulant kind of.
Yeah, it's adrenaline essentially, but then if it's allowed to sit on the shelf, it collects an extra molecule of an oxygen, and then it becomes adrenochrome. But it's synthetic adrenochrome. But it's basically, it does the trick. Junkie needs a fix, right? And so what they've done is, and this is actually, I thought it was clever. The federal government in the United States bought a bunch of EpiPens because they were like, oh, you got to have an EpiPen in the school now. So every school had to have a box of EpiPens. Well, these EpiPens would expire at the end of the season, right? And it's like, okay, by law, you have to return them back to the manufacturer. So all these EpiPens end up going back to the manufacturer and put in a warehouse. So, number one, they've been paid for by the taxpayers. So the junkies got their fix. The collection has been paid for by the taxpayers. And the storage is being paid for by the taxpayers. It's a good fucking scam when you think about it. I mean, holy shit. I mean, think about fucking go rewatch the Blade movies, the first one. It's like, holy fuck. I mean, look at that with new eyes, and just think, instead of blood, just think adrenochrome. Oh fuck yeah! You're just like, oh my god, this is politicians. They've been doing this for quite some time now, and so. They've got, okay, where are we at? We're back. We're still back in time after World War...
After World War II and...
Yeah, okay, so it's been back and forth, McCarthy era. And then we get to the Summer of Love. Now that was a movement designed to push atheism. A lot of atheism came out of that movement. Yeah. And so that's why it was tolerated. And
what year? That was in the 60s?
60, 69, somewhere around there.
Okay, yeah.
So they that was to promote a level of spiritualism without godliness. So that's what that was helpful for that reason. And somewhere along and actually World War II. Yeah. The concentration camps weren't just for Jews. Were for other minorities as well, like gypsies and what have you, and Poles. And these were experiments. They weren't just gas chamber experiments. No, there was a lot of blood experiments. And also, they were also trying, they were doing possession experiments as well, because they were looking for a way to possess humans without permission.
Right.
But they had no success, because all ended up happening is if they possessed a human without without permission, madness would follow, and the unlucky demon would end up going mad with the human. So that was a problem. They only did like a few experiments like that, and then they moved on to other things. But what they did discover at that time was they discovered a way. Like, you wonder why there were so many experiments done with children? Here's why. They discovered a way to hold off the thought adjuster.
That's right. Yeah, we were going to talk about that.
Yes. Okay. This is horrific in itself.
Yeah.
They found a way to keep children from having thought adjusters, and the way that they figured out how to do it was to keep the child intellectually distracted and never given the opportunity to think about or to act in an alter way. Never gave him a chance to do a good deed. Okay? So they made sure that in these environments, the children would always have everything that they needed, so that they wouldn't have the opportunity to help or feel bad for a fellow child.
Okay.
So that, so they coddled them a lot. They were strict with them, but not cruel, so that you didn't want the other ones to feel sorry for anybody.
Okay.
So that's how they raised them, in a very emotionally sterile environment. And so no altruism at all, and and that's how they raised them. And then what they found is that by raising the children this way, it staved off the thought adjuster, and that was handy for them. But they also discovered that after adolescent, basically what you had on your hands was a narcissistic sociopath.
Okay.
So so what do you do with that? Well, you do what any government would do. You use them for assassination. I mean, they were not raised around emotion. They have no empathy. They don't care. So they just turned them into weapons, and they set them loose on the world. And well, what do you think the Cold War was all about? A lot to do with dealing with these sociopathic children.
And we think some of the folks we run into on Facebook and Twitter and stuff are the snowflakes, basically. Or these people were at least that bad or worse, probably.
Well, think about it. Having all of this military training.
And no conscience.
Essentially.
And being loyal to somebody, doing something that somebody's going to tell you, or being directed into it, whatever.
They were loyal to each other.
Okay.
But their loyalty didn't extend beyond their family, I
Okay.
guess.
Sure.
Like
Yeah, I know what you
pure, like almost pure tribalism. You know,
Okay.
that's basically, it's like that's how early man was before the thought adjuster showed up. Yeah, you're getting it now. Yeah, you didn't care about anything beyond your tribal group.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the tribe was everything, but your family unit was important and your tribe was important. You didn't leave your tribe because you knew if you did, you're going to be killed. Well, that's the kind of mentality that these children are raised with. You know, they don't trust anybody outside of their tribe.
Yep.
And but they have skills. Because remember, they had to keep these children intellectually occupied.
Yep. So you teach them stuff.
So you teach them stuff. They learn jujitsu, karate, like just about every form of self-defense. They learned how to use every fucking weapon that was available at that time. All the technology, all the decoding technology. Because I mean, you run out of things. You didn't want to run out of things to keep them occupied. So if you're dealing with if you're constantly moving forward, you had to, and you didn't want them to get bored either. So that meant that you didn't get the public school regurgitation bullshit like you do now. I mean, holy shit! It's like the first semester is the same as the second semester. It's like, what the fuck's the point? I thought we were supposed to move on. But no, they had to keep them moving forward to keep them from being bored.
Okay, so Cold War, that's one of the... And a lot of this, let's see, what was it you said on this? The 20% visible, 80% not visible yet. The war, the hidden war, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of have an idea something's fishy because the Cold War happened, but we really don't know, or, you know, most people didn't know what was actually happening. It was a secret war.
It was a secret war. Now, because all of these experiments took place in top secret, the only reason we know about them now is because it's 80 years later. We can read the documents. But at the time, nobody knew this shit was going on. And so, and nobody knew about the harvesting of adrenochrome from children. Okay? So during most of the Cold War, nobody knew this. This was a well-kept secret by the other side. They wanted to keep this a secret because they knew that if the humans ever found out, they would fucking go wild because it's their children, and they fucking knew it. So they had to set to work. It's like, you know, so they knew someday they're going to be found out. So they set to work. They actually hatched their plan to reshape society in the 60s.
Yeah.
And so they it actually started with the Kennedy assassination. The Kennedy assassination wasn't just a willy-nilly plan.
No, it wasn't random, let's say.
No,
it happened for a very specific reason.
Yes, it did, and on a very specific day, for a reason too.
Okay.
Because they wanted maximum effect for the morphogenic field.
Okay.
So what they did is that Kennedy symbolized hope.
Mm-hmm.
He also symbolized family and American values. Because, I mean, everybody loved Jackie Kennedy. Everybody loved the children. I mean, there was like so much video, and everybody just adored the Kennedy children. They were like the perfect American family. And, you know, and also the typical, because, you know, let's face it, JFK was getting a little action on the side. So,
yeah.
But, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, set aside his extramarital affairs, he was a decent human being, for the most part. And you know, he had high
for
ideals.
For a politician.
For a politician.
Anyway,
but he had some high ideals.
Yes.
And so whether that is true or not is is irrelevant, because that is how the American
That was the
people.
appearance the Kennedys presented.
That's how the American people felt.
Correct.
That is all that really matters.
Mm-hmm.
So by killing him in a very public way, that sent a shockwave through the American people, and also it was to symbolize the death of the nuclear family, and also the death of hope for that if you think you can just come to the White House and do whatever you want, that hope was dashed that day. Any intelligent person understood that. And and then as time went on, people began to understand it more and more as they seen the crop of politicians that appeared after Kennedy. Yeah. It just went from bad to worse, and so that was all done for a specific reason, and that put and then comes the Summer of Love. And so that's when extramarital sex was promoted, right. Freedom and shit like that, and they used the women's movement to be like, women need to be free. Well, by that time, women were already making it into the workforce,
pretty much,
and a lot of them at executive level, because businessmen at that time were not stupid. I mean, a lot of businessmen at that time knew that women were a hell of a lot better at some of the administrative tasks than men. And so they were already being hired for that stuff. That barrier was just mostly there in people's minds, but in reality it was mostly gone. Okay. Because you got to remember, America is a capitalist society. Capitalists don't make money being bigots or prejudiced against the idea of women in the workforce. A capitalist looks at that and just be like, hey, that's just cheap labor. That's, and as an executive looked at a woman as a CEO, I'm getting that. She's twice as good as her job, and I'm getting her for half price. Any businessman worth his salt is going to do that. And you think, oh gee, women were only getting half price. But here's the thing. That was only in the beginning.
Right.
You give it another 10, 15 years, women would have been getting the same salary as men, because they would have fucking demanded it after a while.
Hey Neil, how's it going?
Because once you get good at a job, and you've been in that job long enough, you can just go to your boss and just be like, yeah, I want a raise. And if you don't give it to me, I'm leaving, and I'm not going to train my replacement.
Here we go. Oops. Reply to...
No boss wants to hear that. Because that's a nightmare situation. Because, if, you got somebody that's doing a good job, and they know where all the keys are, why do you want to lose that? So you pay a little extra to keep that person around. That's how business works. I mean, businessmen are in the business of business, and they don't make decisions like real businessmen. Capitalists don't make decisions based on prejudice and taboos. They make decisions on what's going to make them money.
Okay. So yeah, we had
Okay. Yeah. So that's what happened with the Summer of Love. So that destroyed the family unit. A lot of single parents came out of that, and also the other situation that was born out of that was men raising children that were not their own. Yeah, you don't think that causes problems? Think again. And then that all came about through the 80s, where we had the latchkey children. Yeah. Where children went to school with the keys to the house on a string around their neck. Yeah, how lovely, eh?
To a two-income household, yeah.
Yeah, to a two-income.
So wonderful, right?
Yeah, that got destroyed, and then you come up through the 90s, And those latchkey children, they end up having children. And what the fuck do they know about raising children?
Right, yeah.
So they did the same thing their fucking parents
Okay,
did.
so Neil's asking for topic. What's our topic? What is our topic, Crow?
Our
Actually, that I can
topic-
tell Neil here.
Oh my goodness! I guess we're talking how
Why the world is so effed up.
Yeah,
basically.
why the world is so effed up. That's a good one. It's a bit of a horror story. So, I guess to get back on track, so during so now the idea of children not having thought adjusters, that has worked for them. Oh yeah, we were talking about how now they want to re-engineer society so that they get us to a point to where we are not empathetic towards each other anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, guess what? They
Kind of working. They almost succeeded.
almost succeeded because so you got the children that the latchkey children, they're raising children.
Yeah.
How what the fuck do they
And
know
what do
about
they know
raising
about
children?
raising children because they don't really have a model.
No, so then those children grow up and they're even more fucked up than their parents. And now those children are poised to become parents.
So fourth generation of this dysfunctional family, basically.
And that it has actually, and you said it, this is the generation that if they had been able to continue on with their plan with the president that they wanted, this generation would have been wholly sucked in to the fantasy to the Fantasyland narrative, and half the world would be living in that fantasy, and the other half of the world would be living the nightmare of that. And but you know, it's been interrupted. It had a 4-year interruption.
Yes.
Is what that had.
And in 4 days, I guess we'll find out whether the 4-year interruption may become an 8-year interruption. But we can talk about
That after. We
I
want to talk
think.
about that after.
We will wait until after the U.S. election to talk about what's going to happen because we don't know what's going to happen on election day.
Yeah, we really nobody does.
No.
Not even the remote viewers.
Yeah.
And
I was going to ask, how far up the chain does Michael, the ruler of this universe, does he know with absolute certainty? I don't think so. He can make a good guess,
no, what Michael.
but it'll surprise him, won't it? Somewhat.
It's always surprise. Okay, let's put it this. This was a beautiful thought I had. I have an appointment to stand before Michael at some point in the future. Michael knows what we'll talk about. Michael has already had that conversation with me, and I've already had that conversation with Michael. The only thing really left in that whole thing is for me to show up for that conversation. The conversation has already happened. I just have to show up. And that's basically, and so Michael looks, this is also the way the Father does things too. Michael looks at where he wants to be, and then he works it backwards.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we are told to trust the plan, is because it's already been calculated backwards. So we know what the outcome is that we want.
Yeah,
We'll
talk more about. I mean, yeah,
we move backwards in time to see. This is also why Q has markers.
Mm-hmm.
People, I don't think we had this conversation, did we?
On the air, certainly not. I don't think.
No,
but,
there's markers. Q has markers, and those markers are so that Q knows where they are at in time. because
and then it can quote one of them. Q can quote one of them and talk about whatever it's, or you know what? I'm going to just shut up and you talk about it. But
it's a marker so that they know that they are on track.
Okay.
Because you've got.
Oh, the markers are Q's notes.
Yeah.
Q's putting the notes in the thing. It's not necessarily something that's going to put them on and say, "Oh, this was whatever." I mean, that may happen later on.
No, but
it's Q's no. We're getting to see Q's journal.
Yeah. Well, it lets him know where he's at in time.
Right. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
because
cool.
Q, if Q is who I think Q is,
okay,
they are constantly forward in time.
Okay. Yeah.
And they've got to come back in time, but they need to know where they're at any given time. Okay. Because any time you mess with time, fuck. You end up creating a deviation in time.
Okay, so you got to have, it's like backing up your operating system image onto a disk. You have these various, or something like that. You create these reference things that you can look at.
Yeah, reference points. That's exactly what it does.
Yeah, so Neil says verbal. Yeah, so Michael, the person Michael we're talking about, is basically the creator and ruler of this local universe.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in more detail at another time. Thank you.
Yeah. Where was I? So these.
Whoever it is,
so
Q
that
has markers.
Yeah, so that when they come back to the present, they're like, okay, we are here, so that they're basically the road signs in time, so that they know exactly which timeline they are on.
Okay.
Because they got to know what timeline they're on, because they go to a future some point in the future and see what their result is. Then they come back and it's like, okay, we've got to be on this timeline in order to end up at that result.
Okay, so it's like experiments in a time. It's like a time laboratory almost.
Yeah.
Where they can see kind of what.
But Michael knows what he's doing.
Yes.
I mean, he's already.
I'm going to assume that. Yes.
Yes, he knows what he's doing. And he sees all the timelines. And he picks and chooses which timeline he wants. But like we talked about before, timelines are constantly changing because free will creatures are involved. Mm-hmm. It's like I said, I have an appointment with Michael sometime in the future. That time is not set. It's not set at all. I just have to decide to show up.
Okay.
And because I have to decide to show up, that puts an unknown in the equation.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you never know what the fuck I'm going to do. Because I might be on my way to the appointment, and then, all of a sudden I'll be like, squirrel! So,
and it could even change the topics of the conversation.
Exactly.
He knows the conversation will happen. Knows what both of you probably know what some of the topics may be, but the details haven't coalesced yet.
They haven't coalesced yet. No, they haven't.
Okay.
Because I have to, God only knows what I'm going to run into on my way to that appointment. I mean, like I said, squirrel.
Yep.
Then after you chase the squirrel for a while, I might go a little bit further and just be like, I don't know, hippopotamus. Whatever fucking gets my attention. I've got eternity. Why am I going to be in a hurry?
So, where were we? Q markers.
Markers.
Are we still defining the problem, or are we talking about where maybe it's going to start to get fixed? Where I kind of
we don't know if it's going to be fixed until after the election.
That's right. Yes.
Everything hinges. And this is where everything comes up through. Now, the horror story took a left turn for the Fallen when a geoglyph showed up in a Utah dry lake bed. That geoglyph got 13 miles worth of lines. So all the lines stretched out is 13 miles. So that's like 26 kilometers.
20 kilometers, let's say. Yeah.
No, 2 kilometer, 2 kilometers.
1.6.
1.6. Okay.
1.6. 160 kilometers an hour is 100 miles an hour for your car.
Okay. So we got over. So we've got over 20 kilometers of lines then, from 13 miles. And they showed up in a dry lake bed. Now, you think to yourself, oh, lines, what the fuck, right? Well, these lines showed up in a period of 3 days because it was a common place for the Air Force to fly over for some of their training. They weren't there 3 days ago, is what the report said.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 3 days that these lines showed up in the middle of fucking nowhere. And when investigators went out and put boots on the ground, there was not a vehicle track in sight. All the earth was taken out of those lines, and the lines were about 3 to 4 inches deep, up to 6 inches in some places. All the dirt was taken out and removed off site.
Taken completely away.
Completely away.
No
There's
evidence.
no evidence of it being on site.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also no evidence of human traffic or vehicular
no vehicles,
traffic.
no foot traffic, nothing that, just basically appeared out of nowhere is what they're seeing.
And if a human decided that they're going to do it, well, first of all, they'd need machines, so they'd leave a mess behind. Mm-hmm. But let's say a human did do it and they were very careful, and say you got half a dozen humans out there to take care of it. Well, right off the bat, it's a 3-day drive from civilization. And to take that 3-day drive out to the middle of this nowhere area, well, it's not much different than taking a 3-month trip across the ocean. You need to pack some shit, or you're going to be dead. And water, well, calculate how much water a human being needs to stay alive, and times that by 6, that's a lot of fucking water. And so, yeah, that didn't happen. So these lines are there, and they showed up mysteriously, and it's the geoglyph itself that fascinated the shit out of me. And when I seen this geoglyph, the very first thing that came in my mind, that is the Father's seal. That was the very first thing that was said to me. That is the Father's seal. And I was like, what? What? And they're like, Father's seal. And when I did do a little bit research, you do find it in India. And yes, they do call it the Father's seal. And yeah, that actually surprised me as well. Father of the universe. What the heck? So this showed up in August of 1991.
Neil says, deep rabbit hole, you have no idea.
Yeah, you have no idea. And that is why I say that there is a magisterial son on the planet.
Okay.
I think that he came down with that seal.
And so, timeline when the seal appeared?
Early August 91.
Okay.
And right around that time is also when I believe Michael was born on this planet. Either conceived or born.
Okay.
One or the other. And there are several reasons why I think that. Because, well, I also remember that time in my life because it was also right around the time that my daughter was born. So I was like hyper aware of everything that was going on because I was paying attention. Because, you know, I didn't want Kathy to drop the kid on the kitchen floor. I was like, that would have been my worst fucking nightmare. Like, you know, if you need to go to the hospital, we're going to the fucking hospital. You know, I didn't have any desire to deliver my kid in the back seat of a car. I'm sure
so
most
what,
people would.
for, I don't know how many of these you've been watching, but when Krow's talking about the birth of Michael on the planet, it's basically what Jesus did 2,000 years ago. The Creator's Son incarnated.
Yes.
In the flesh.
Yeah. And I've said it before, after his little after his performance 2,000 years ago, well, you think the Father's going to say no to anything that Michael wants? Michael wants it. Michael gets it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what the Father does for his faithful sons, and Michael was faithful. I mean, creator of the universe, and he let humans nail him to a cross. He let
Yes.
them do it. Could have stopped it any time, but he let them. Who the fuck does that? Really, a faithful son doing the will of the Father does that. And so, yeah, Father's like, yeah, you want it, kiddo? You got it. You went through a lot. No other creator son would have allowed himself to be nailed to a cross by his own creation. Think about that for 2 seconds. And
Right, so, yeah, we're coming up on 1:55. Are we gonna wrap it up? And well, I mean,
okay,
it's your narrative, so I'm kind of letting you know, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's why I think that there's a magisterial son on the planet. That's why I think that Michael was born on the planet. Because after that, I started getting these, I don't know, visions, this feeling that something shifted, and my mind kept on drifting to the Son of Man. And I wasn't even a believer at that time, not really. I just, like, you know, I read my Bible in Sunday school.
Neil's an atheist.
Oh, okay.
You didn't know that.
It doesn't matter.
No, that's fine.
No, that's fine. You know, everybody has their thing.
I mean, I got no problem with atheists. The question for you is, are you interested in having a conversation or listening to our conversation? That's all I care about.
All I say to atheists is never stop investigating.
Right, yeah.
That's all I say to atheists is, you know what? It's like, okay, you're an atheist, great. But never stop looking. Never stop learning. Never stop being curious about the world around you. And at some point, you're going to make if you made up your mind that, that God doesn't exist and doesn't need to exist, that's fine. That is your free will decision. That is what the Creator created you for. To, if that is what you hold to, then that is just more experience in the universe.
Yeah, whatever your decision about any of this you come to of your own free will, that's great.
Yeah, that's your decision. Now, I mean, if you don't think about soul survival, then don't think about it. Don't, if you think that you're just going to blink out of existence once you die, then fine, that's great. Peter and I, we have a different viewpoint on that. We believe that there is such thing as soul survival, and we believe that the universe operates on a certain set of principles, and when those principles are applied properly, then you can look forward to soul survival through faith in our Creator. But hey, you know what? We could just as easily be wrong, and you could just as easily be right. But you know what? I don't care, because I really, really love talking about this stuff.
Okay.
So who
So it
cares?
looks like we're going to have a Q&A sometime with a discussion with Neil, because he's wanting to debate, discuss, whatever here. So anyway, so in the future we'll have to consider. Yeah, he says inaccurate, I guess. So we'll have to consider something like that where there's interaction and things, but. Definitely that'll happen after the U.S. election at the very earliest.
Criticism is inevitable. Questions are most certainly welcomed.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. He says, I don't believe the light turns off. So, okay.
Don't believe the light turns off. Oh, I go with Einstein's
Energy doesn't stop existing. Okay.
Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It moves from one form into another. Well, that's basically spiritualism in a nutshell.
Sure. Yep,
It's just that we're just talking about the moving pieces involved in all of this clockwork in order to get to a certain result.
Right.
Now, makes sense to me that there would be a process of soul survival. And I never did like the thought of just, believe and have faith. It's like, I'm sure that is probably fine, but it doesn't satisfy my intellect. And I think that for primitive man, that was more than enough.
Right. But we know we have, we believe we have free will, I guess, and so the believe and have faith, if we didn't have free will, what? Completely different conversation.
Well, I think I've said this before. How is it possible for evolutionary creatures to have a spiritual inclination if there was the universe is spiritualists? Why is it that we have this inclination towards spiritual things if the universe is spiritualist? And and we're not the only ones. I mean, everybody belongs to some kind of religion or has some kind of belief. Atheism and agnostics are in the minority. Why is that? And I'm sure that the very first answer that you get is because, religion was beat down people's throats from a young age and rah, rah, rah. That might be so, but even children seem to come to this conclusion on their own with little or no guidance. I mean, I've seen children grow up in a house completely devoid of any type of spiritual discussion. I mean, just completely void. One friend comes to mind. Not even a Bible in the house. And so, not even... the family was busy running their business. They didn't care about that shit. But yet, this son, he grows up and he's got everything that he wants. He's had the cars. Daddy paid the bills. No reason to give it any thought, right? But for some odd reason, my friend just kept on feeling like there was something missing out of his life all the time. And he tried to fill it with drugs, hookers, fancy cars. He did all of that. But by the time he made it to his late 20s, he seemed to figure out that none of that seemed to matter. And he ended up working for this guy, this contractor. And this contractor invited him to his church. He was like, why don't you just come to my church? He just seemed lost. So my buddy, he went. Again, not even giving it much thought because, he's a polite guy. This guy is the biggest mouthpiece for Christianity. And he will talk about how it saved his life all the time. And like I said, I know this guy. And
so we'll have to do an episode on this because what changed his life? He heard this particular church, they stuck mainly with the New Testament and Jesus' teachings. When my friend heard those teachings, it changed his life completely. He didn't give away his money or give away his possessions. Nothing like that, but he had a fuller appreciation for the beauty and life around him after once he started going to church and affirmed himself. I think it only... Let me see, how do I say this? Because on the atheist-theist discussion boards, there's a lot of both theists and atheists who seem to agree when I make the statement it doesn't matter so much, and Crow's got a different twist on this too, but understanding or living by the things that Jesus and many other teachers, we will hasten to admit, or I will, knowing that, I don't even want to say this, we'll have to talk about it some other time, but finding out that you're not alone in, even if you're just wanting to be a moral atheist or whatever, finding something that's like, okay, yeah, there's this system that mirrors.
And so being a moral atheist is closer to the teachings of the Son of Man
That's what
than what most preachers fucking teach from the pulpit. I've met a lot of atheists, and
they're better Christians.
They are better Christians than a lot of Christians, and I always think to myself when I'm sitting there having a chat with an atheist, and it's like all this involvement in the community and the volunteering that they do and the helping in the community that they're doing. I mean, they're not doing it for any altruistic reason other than they just want to do it.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, it's just like you're this fucking close. but hey, you know what? It really doesn't matter, because in the end, I mean, let's say a moral atheist. Okay, you got a moral atheist, right? They lived a moral life.
Yeah.
Guess what happens? They already fulfilled the first criteria of soul survival, and they didn't even know it.
Right. Yeah.
They developed a strong character foundation. Mm-hmm. So they've already filled one of the criteria. The other criteria is having a thought adjuster. Well, I'm sorry, everybody on earth gets a thought adjuster because of Pentecost. So everybody gets a thought adjuster. Unless otherwise interrupted.
Right.
So you've already filled in 2 of the 3 criterias for soul survival. So guess what ends up happening with your atheist ass after the death experience? You're going to end up in front of the Landadoc Fathers, and your thought adjuster, which you don't even know, nor do you care about, is still going to be standing there right beside you. And the Landadoc Fathers are going to ask them, it's like, well, what do you think? And the thought adjuster is going to be like, you know what? He's got good character potential. And the Landadoc Fathers are like, you know what? Spirit fusion for you. And you get to actually have time to make a decision on whether or not you want to accept the reality of the Eternal Father and his personality, or reject that reality. You will be given the chance. And I'd be curious to know which one you would choose when standing before the Landadoc Fathers. And that's what it comes down to. And that's why I say it doesn't fucking matter.
All right,
just
so
do the right thing.
We'll have to have another conversation. Let's see, we're running up on 2:07, and it's going to take me forever to upload the video onto YouTube. So we're going to wind it down. I think, so we've gotten pretty much up to what we're facing. What's at stake in this election, basically, and then we'll have to do sometime an episode on how simple the original Christianity was. I'll tell you just right now the 3 main tenets: the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, and community service. And that's freaking it, man. So, and we'll talk about, whatever, but, and we can, I think we'll answer a lot of your questions and some other things, but yeah, we can definitely do a Q&A from time to time where we do answer questions. This is the most interaction we've had from a viewer writing in questions. This is the first time he said it. We've had anybody write anything, so we're on the learning curve with that, and we would be glad to have a conversation.
Well,
about
questions.
Yes, questions. We can take questions.
It's hard to have.
We can take questions and respond to them for sure. That's what we can absolutely do, and
quite frankly, that's the direction the Father wants this to go. Anyways,
Right, is questions and not
And-
nobody telling anybody. Ram Dass puts it so well. He said, "I'm tired of being should upon."
Ah, yes, yes.
So we're not going to do that. We're going to have questions and responses and things. So, all right, we are going to shut it down and
yeah, and
what?
what? Y'all ever wonder about the card on the Mad Hatter's hat? And it's a reflection of our reality. 10 over 31 creates an irrational number.
Oh.
The Mad
Okay.
Hatter is the embodiment of irrationality.
Okay.
And with that, we're signing off.
All right, thank you so much for watching.
Salute.
Have a great weekend, you too. Thank you.
Mhm.
Ending. We are. Choose a few moments. And now.
I think we're ending, and I'm going to shut off my phone.